Welcome, real estate rock and rollers. So you want to be a rock and roller? Well, real estate rock stars are really starting to take the fore. I'm so pleased with the response that we've had as we've posted up the series one or season one, if you want to call it that, of our real estate rock and roller postings. Got to say this, I think that you look back at them and it's really coming together. I think there is a common theme there. It's certainly good information that you can be learning from, but also sharing a lot of things with prospective clients. And, you know, I know that I've said this before and I can't stress it enough, the opportunity that exists despite the things that you're seeing in and around COVID is just remarkable. And I just cannot begin to stress the importance of putting as much time and energy into some of the things I'm about to share with you now, because beyond that, I can very confidently say that we are seeing some enormous success coming off the back of a lot of the things we're doing. So this is the second recording. We are in Rocktober. I'm hoping that that you know you can feel the market begin to move and you can get your needle to hit that groove this month. It becomes so important. This session that we are talking about now is basically Springboard, because Rocktober there's a double meaning to it, and I just need to share that with you, in that what you do this month, especially given that a lot of the continuity and momentum that you may or may not have had could readily have been robbed with the advent of lockdown restrictions, if you've had them in your area, which, you know, just about everybody has in some way, shape or form. And if it's kind of crueled your momentum, for want of a better term, it now becomes the important time to do something about it. You know, when I talk to sales team leaders, I'm very, very quick to point out that we call this the last quarter that leads us into the end of the financial year. And at this level, I have no trouble explaining to you some of the shortcomings that sit around that, given that you guys many of you are running what is effectively a dynamic duo, where you've got maybe a sales associate supporting you on the prospecting end, or some of you might have gone one step further and you've got someone helping you with the admin and, you know, and all that work that supports your listings. I know that Nick Saparovich has got Hannah Saparovich, who's doing all of his light blue work, his sales associate work, which is basically prospecting. And then importantly, he's got Liz, who's doing all of his red work. So they're really operating almost like a team unto themselves. I hesitate at the word EBU, which is effective business unit, because I know this tongue in cheek, I drive people crazy. If you jump back and look at one of the previous recordings we had here, we talk about assistants versus having an assistant. And I'm not saying that either is the wrong way to go, but you just need to be mindful of the fact that if you go down the path of actually having an assistant, that you actually bring yourself into management, and that has a whole lot of obligations and a whole lot of operational constraints that you need to be aware of. But what is the big deal about this quarter, and why is it so imperative that you understand where you need to put your focus and energy moving forward? So most of you that are actually in the RocknRolla program, where I'm meeting with you every week, setting up plans, making sure that you're onto the right things, will know that I've spent a lot of time and energy in saying to you that you need to build a list of prospective sellers. I know that many of you have got extensive databases, you've got past clients, all that sort of thing. I'm not discarding that, but you need to hone in on the list of what we now call active property sellers. Some refer to it as a chase list. Others refer to it as a listings to get list. I know that I did for many years. I now just call it active property seller list. This is representative of those property sellers that have moved from dormancy into becoming active and they're researching the market ahead of selling. So by virtue of the fact that they become active, this essentially means that they will be attending open for inspections in New South Wales this week. They've now lifted the restrictions and we're back to having open for inspections. Queensland's always been operating that way. Not sure where we are in NZ at the moment. I know that some of the regional areas, they've relieved that and they're back to open for inspections. I'm not sure what's happening in the heart of Auckland. Glenn, you might even type that in if you can tell me where we're at with that. But it will lift. I keep saying the future will arrive. And needless to say, if you look at these final 3 months, this is how you want to set it up. Right now, Rocktober to me, and this is why I call it Springboard, we're in that month right now. It is the essential setup month that will determine whether it's Christmas, at Christmas you're eating turkey or spam, you know. So it is the springboard. And what we need to be doing now is understanding who are those active property sellers that sit on that list that are imminently looking at selling, you know, within the next 3 to 4 months. Include those that may have even said to you that they will be selling into the new year that want to wait. I know that Ange Sorales and Stuart Hatfield, on the back of some of the stuff that we've just done now, not least of which I sent to many of you that are in the program, a cover letter. So part of the passive connection that we're making, and I'll give more rise to this in just a few moments, but we're actually doing an automated CMA, getting that out to the sellers. There is a cover letter that went with it. I did read it out here last month. You can go back and have a listen to that. But it is devoid of your opinion, and it's just giving them the comparative value or information around that, which creates a platform for engagement and discussion around what's going on. Now, having sent those out already, Ange and Stewie have been able to get up to, I think it's 4 sellers that are dead set certainties that just moved almost immediately from being or thinking about doing something and leaving it until maybe next year, but have now come on. So those numbers are coming. They're shoring them up. Don't worry. Those that are actually disseminating themselves nicely and moving into early next year, that's okay too, because our whole aim in this last quarter, again, this being Rocktober, is to set up to get some rise or definition around those sellers that you know are going to be selling through this quarter before Christmas and those that are going to fall into the after Christmas category. Don't worry too much about that distinction right now. But what we have to do is identify these and work a system of engagement that in particular, in a very particular fashion, that we service them to the point. And this is one that I actually was talking with Sean Donovan just this morning, just before we got on here. He said, I get it. We're trying to give them the service, give them the engagement. So we move back into that space where we get an invitation to a presentation rather than focusing on the solicitation. So, you know, I've just heard from New Zealand. Yeah, they're on alert too for this week, but that's okay. So just in preparedness, we need to understand all of those things that we need to do. So this month, we want to identify them and move them into that service that just really performs well. Then when we move out of that and we go from October into November, so again, I'll be giving rise to this next week and the week after, we start to understand that we've given away a long time ago the idea of having November, then December. December just seems to be one of those months, unfortunately, where the moment, I know that's very similar to New Zealand, the moment we hear the word December, particularly when we reach around the 10th, even worse if we have the office Christmas party early in that month, we just kind of switch off. It can be even worse that clients too can switch off when they start to think about Christmas and they start to want to put things off till next year. You as a peak performance professional need to explain to them that we sell properties all the way up to Christmas. I'll talk more about this as the month progresses, but right now you need to get that list of at least 25. I know that with Ange and Stuart, They had a list of 40. Nick Saparovich, his list is knocking on around 30. Speaking to Glenn Taylor over there in New Zealand, has just sent a message through, and he was telling me he's working through a list of about 90 that he's been able to identify, which is sensational. We work on whittling that down, getting some real clarity. But what you want to come up with is about 25. You also want to focus on those that are centric to a service area. I know that, as we get momentum and listings beget listings, and when you have a buyer that comes in and they've got something that's a little bit out of area, you might pick that one up too. And these are all great fodder. These are fantastic. I'll take a listing anywhere that borders them in the Kui, but don't forget to focus on your core market and have everything centric, because if you can take market share and that gives rise to good, strong presence, and you focus in and around that, remembering that listings beget listings. So, it will just give rise, re-engage, particularly if your momentum's fallen back and you're finding yourself back in that traction stage where you've got to build market share. Every single time you get a listing opportunity, you want to turn 1 into 2, turn those 2 into 4, and then 4 into 8. So you just want to create this springboard right now in Rocktober, the foundation of setting up this quarter. We get this quarter right. We create that dissemination during December of which ones are going to sell prior to Christmas, which ones might be looking at after Christmas, and that might change as you go, but at least we start to understand that dissemination. We put all of our energy into working in and around those sellers that we have identified, servicing them to the max. They'll come to the fore. Well, they'll be inviting you down. And let's look at the numbers. If you've got a list of 25, I can honestly tell you that you're going to be looking, particularly some of you that are with the higher level skill set, with those invitations coming in, you're going to be looking somewhere between 15 to maybe as high as 20 listings. Even if you're relatively new, you've got to be looking at 10. And this has got to carry you through to Christmas, I would have thought, successfully. Now, if that list grows and you look at someone like Angie's list at 40, some others that might even be higher, but if you can get it to as high as 50, well, now you're in territory where you could be looking at 8, even 10 listings per month, and everything's going to work out fine. I know that my chase list, my listings to get, as I used to call it then, which would now be the APS list, that had to be somewhere between 40 and 50, and I would service these people to the max. I cannot begin to tell you how important it is to not make the mistake of trying to focus on too much. I don't have time to be putting too much conversation into this right now, but one of the things that we focus on here at Real Estate Rockstar is understanding that not every client is going to suit us. And I want clients that are suited to my product. For me, primarily, I want, I am essentially probably I'm just going to use the word, the most expensive agent in terms of the fact that my percentage is higher. And so it should be, because I deliver a better service. And if we make sure that all of the things that we're doing in communication during what I refer to now as the pre-list, before we even get to meet these people, are consistent with that product that we're offering, well, then the question of fees really not going to beckon. We're not going to have too much trouble around that. All right, so I just want to move into this area and start to show some of the things that we're doing. I know this is a reiteration, but get this very clear with what we ought to be doing as rock stars right now. First and foremost, creating that list, being very clear on everyone that so much as farted in the general direction. Yes, I said farted in the general direction of wanting to sell, that they do formulate this list, and we are creating strong engagement. As I was saying to Sean Donovan this morning, you've got to see yourself as they see you. So don't look at it and think, oh, that's just enough. But, so often I see situations, and even if you're experienced, it may well have degenerated to this, where we're doing not much more than just calling them and having a chat. And if that prospective seller is saying, oh, with the lockdown. I'm just not interested in doing anything right now. I'd rather that, talk about it again when the fog clears. Well, the fog is clearing. That's the first point. But the second point is it's really not up to them. It's up to you as your advisor to actually get them engaged in and around the right time. If I was talking about the market conditions, both in here in New Zealand, and I did allude to this again last week, the facts of the matter are that the lending institutions are looking at changing their lending criteria because on all fronts at the moment, miraculously, despite what should be happening with the economic fallout in and around COVID, and there should be some quietening because there's been a unexpected shortage of properties coming to the market because people have put it off. Well, prices have continued to rise. Now, I don't expect that to stay the same. In fact, if I was a betting man, I reckon, which I am from time to time, I reckon that you're going to see markets come off. I honestly believe that as the full weight of what has happened economically is felt, that you're going to see an oversupply as people start to then all put their properties on the market. They are a little bit like sheep. They'll do it at the same time. And this will eventually have pressure on prices to fall. Now, this is, I guess, substantiated by the fact that most lending institutions are now giving rise to cool their markets because they believe they're sitting in false economies to change the lending to value ratios so that people are going to have to come up with a bigger deposit. This invariably means that people are going to be able to borrow less, and eventually this is going to force prices down even further. Add to that the fact that you might have an oversupply of property coming on, then invariably that's exactly what's going to happen. Don't panic about that. That just all adds up to a different mode of operation inside that market. But, I think you're going to see a lot of things. I think you're going to see a huge increase with economic pressure in divorce rate. So there's going to be some breakups there that invariably comes with it. I know it's not a palatable subject for some to be discussing, but them's the facts. You're going to see a significant increase in people selling in and around financial difficulty, jobs being lost, all that sort of stuff. So, it becomes an opportunity for us to solve problems for people, but at the same time, from a business perspective, to enjoy pretty much a heyday. In the environment we've just been through, let's face it, pretty much a monkey can sell real estate, but even worse, you've got those monkeys coming in and they're just offering significant discounts. You've got fixed fee agents, all that sort of thing. And the general consensus out there has really degenerated to the point where people are starting to believe that invariably people are going to want to pay less to sell their property. I think this is just a nonsense. I think that what we've failed to do is push and spend the time on demonstrating the value that a real estate agent brings to the table. And if we have a return to that, if we focus on this area, then you can reestablish the value proposition. And look, I hate to say this, and I just want to spend a little bit of time in and around fee, because I know that a lot of agents are feeling like they're under pressure now, that all of a sudden sellers are saying, well, how much do I have to pay you to sell it? They're aware of the fact that there's a shortage out there. Competitors or agents generally through desperation are saying that they'll do it for less money. And this just forms into a downward spiral. Instead of someone just pulling up, if you really have a strong look at it, the small number, that is what we receive inside the transaction. The disparity between agents' fees, if you really examine it in comparison to the net proceeds that a seller gets, that difference in fee, quite frankly, is marginal. It's not a lot of money. Yes, it is. It is because it's the only sum of money we receive. That disparity appears quite huge, but in the context of the owner, that disparity is marginal, and you need to educate them around this. I just say to them, look, at the end of the day, what's more important to you? A focus on the little number, which is what I receive, or should you be putting your energy into the big number and making that bigger? What would you prefer me to do? Would you rather me make the little number smaller or the big number bigger? Now, given the big number is what you receive, shouldn't we putting our energy into that? Because if the big number is significantly bigger, then the small number is inconsequential. And when you consider that the difference between what you're talking about agents charging is marginal, you know, that little bit more that you feel like you're paying me ends up translating to a whole lot more money in your pocket. And I can give you evidence in and around this. Any agent that's sitting here and is openly wanting to move to discounting their fee percentage before they've even started to market your property, it's almost an admission on their part that they don't truly believe the result's going to be what it's going to be. And in any event, if they're discounting the fee at the start, where is their energy going to be? Is it going to be around just satisfying the transaction itself? In other words, getting it sold to get the money, given that it's a smaller amount? Or is their energy going to be focused on ensuring that the result is its best? Because if you understand where I'm coming from, I don't get paid until you approve of what you get. So effectively, the negotiation around the sales result, you're always in control of it. Because despite what you're thinking about that fee, until you're happy with what you receive in your hand, I don't get paid at all. And you are in control of that approval around that. So I implore you to understand that all you're doing at this point in time is setting the incentive. And surely you want that incentive to be set at a level so that I focus on going back just a second, making that big number bigger. I absolutely beg you to spend some time re-engaging, polishing your skills in and around discussions on fee, and don't avoid it, attack it. You know, when a seller says to me openly, you know, you seem to be the most expensive agent, I don't start defending that. I actually acknowledge that naturally. I say, yeah, well, thank you. What do you think comes with the best agent? Naturally, for a second there, I thought someone might have had the audaciousness to want to charge a higher fee than me. My percentage is the highest because I'm the best at what I do. And you need to understand, inside of consignment selling, the reality is that I get a better result. And I don't look at it as charging you a fee in so much as earning a fee. So because I'm earning the fee, you get the net proceeds of that. And if that amount that I could get, if I get you $5, $10, $20, $30,000 more than the next agent, how much more expensive am I looking now? Because the difference in our fees is marginal. It might be $5,000 or $10,000, but if I get you an additional 30, where are you now? And you are still in the position where you can be the judge of that at the point of sale. So I wouldn't be concerned about that in so much as I would about the attitude and the disposition of the agent. Now, coming back, so that's just a little word on that. The real important point that I want to get across to all of you is how you service them before we get to that meeting, before that discussion's been had. And you need to understand do not look at this equation from our perspective. I get it. As an estate agent, you're always at the ready. So you're talking to these people, you're communicating with them, and all you need to hear from them is they give you the go ahead and you can swing into action with the value pack. But if you look at it strictly speaking from their point of view, given there's a shortage out there, all the other agents are at them. There's all these other agents that are scurrying to them and in their ear and saying, well, we'll sell it off market or we'll sell it cheaper. All of these things don't add up to necessarily the quality of the result. Those competitors are going at it with their own agenda because there's a shortage of property. They know that they can sell it quickly. They're just on the sell, sell, sell. The sellers then fall into the belief that anyone can sell it. Worse, they might then start thinking they can all sell it at the same price. So if you look at it from their perspective, little wonder that they are then become, if we allow the screws to loosen, they become more focused on the agent that's asking the least amount of commission, and at the same time is prepared to make concessions on marketing or not even market the property at all to entertain this ideal of an off-market sale. I saw a grand property the other day. I was just walking past, and there was a signboard out the front, and it just said off-market listing. And I'm thinking, have these guys actually put this property on? The property looks fabulous. And I'm sitting there and saying they just haven't taken that extra time to explain to a seller that advertising doesn't sell real estate, but marketing does. Marketing not only sells it, it improves the perception of value. And if you take the time to explain to someone that a buyer wants an increased perception, because the reality is nobody wants it known that they've got a cheap home. So when a buyer makes that connection with the property, if you've done superb marketing from anything from beautiful photography, great videos, all that sort of thing, all the way through to maybe house styling the property. Now, when you consider this, if that house is styled to perfection, if the furniture that's been put in there is hired and it all looks sensational, all of this adds up to more value. The buyer pays more for the property. They don't get any of the furniture, any of that presentation. They just get the same four walls, but they've paid more money for it. Now, is this not worth taking the time to explain cleverly to a seller? Anyway, back to my original point. What should be you focused on? Well, you built your list of 25, and what you've got to swing into action is a process, is a procedural disposition where you are making passive contact with these sellers. I talk about this with the sales associate level, that we have to, the orientation must be centered around the motive in all of our discussions, but we need to have passive contact, not to the point where we're badgering them each day, and I made this pretty clear. So just a reiteration of that, the first thing you want to be sending out is your property seller's research guide. This is your product statement. Makes it very clear what you're all about. I'm not going to reiterate that. I have done that in recent weeks. The second thing that you then do is automatically start sending the SMS texts. Again, I made mention of that last week. Those are relatively easy to do. And if you jump onto listandsell.com.au, we have those templates for those texts readily available. The third one, which I did send that cover letter out, and I did mention that earlier in this recording, goes out and you send out a preliminary comparative market analysis that does not have your opinion on price, but just surrenders that information. And that comes out to them. And now you've got the context of them to be seeing that. And when you call them, you've got some good subject matter for further engagement. So it's not just one of those calls where you go, you ready yet? Blah, blah, blah. I got this buyer and let's get it on there. You've got something to talk about, which can have some direct relevance to their property. The next one, and this is one that I did not mention last week that you need to do, and it's only come to light because all of a sudden the welcome homes are back. I did say that, you know, if you're not actually conducting open for inspections and you do have new listings, that you could make those sellers aware. But of course, if you do have properties that have come up, and I'll have this cover letter, I'm actually doing it up tonight, just changing it. But if you have open for inspections of properties that are coming to market, and I will modify it, so if you're still in those areas, such as Auckland where you're locked down, you can still invite people to come and see any of your current listings. Doesn't necessarily have to be yours, might even be your colleagues in the office, where they get a chance to see your open for inspection in play. Now, I'll just call up this cover letter that I have here. Sorry, I've just got to get this one up. And this is what you should be sending. So if you have a property that's come to market, that you indeed get an invitation for them to come out and see that property. Right. Oh, sorry, here we go. And this is the letter that we send out with that. Don't worry too much. I'm just going to put it up there so you can actually have a look at it. It'll obviously go in the form of an email. Again, I was asked this question, should you have the proper invitation? I believe you should, that you should print out from Property Marketer if you're one of our Property Marketer clients, but some sort of, image of the property, the date and time, and send it out. Now, if you're not able to open homes, you could just say that we've got it available, have that invitation, say that we are showing people on the weekend between these times, and they can still make an appointment for you to come and for them to come and see it, to just run a comparison. But in this context, I want them to see our open homes in action. So, I had Shawnee had a couple of units. He said, what about the house owners? I said, just send them to your colleagues' properties. So it says there, thanks for the opportunity to prove the real estate advantage, your brand, whatever it is, Barfoot Thompson, it might be Professionals, it might be, First National, it might be Hill and Vatiri Property. So thanks for the opportunity to prove the real estate advantage that Hill and Vatiri offers. We're certain your property will be a standout with our unique marketing. The lead time to selecting an agent allows us to demonstrate and validate any specific marketing elements you would gain by choosing whatever brand you are. These may prove crucial to selecting the right agency. I'd like to invite you to check out our welcome homes. You'd be surprised at the difference we make comprehensively showcasing the property. In advertising, our sales associates extensively promote the event to potential buyers as well as sellers researching the market. Exclusive invitations like those attached are posted, so we'd actually have one attached to that or give it to them or even send it electronically. Delivered an email in the lead up, advertisements appear and so on and so forth. Upon visiting the welcome home, you'll see the small touches. So we're pointing out the differences that contrast against what the competition might do, like background music, displays, brochures, contracts, buying and selling guides, even shoe covers. That's an old one that we used to have. You may or may not want to do that now. Again, you can just adjust it so that those differences are made known. The point is that you want these sellers to see the difference between what you're doing at the welcome home and what they're not, and what the competitors may not be doing. All of this in their mind adds up to the value proposition, so that when you get that invitation down to the listing presentation, they are clearly aware of the contrasted difference. They see the value, and I'll say this over and over again, in the absence of value, cost becomes an issue, but wherever value is present, cost is not an issue. Now, if you then move from there and you get the market roundup out the week on the next week, which is your newsletter telling them what's going on in the market, you move from there, get your accolades out, maybe the TwoView platform showing some, further marketing and advertising that you can do, which at no cost to them. And the last but by no means least, as we said last week, then move to getting your buyers out there and naming those buyers specifically to give them a level of comfort and to show them, so that you don't get spiked on that off-market thing, that should they want you to introduce buyers without going through the advertising, all that sort of stuff, you can do it just the way your competitors might be offering. Now, if you look at it from their point of view, and they've got all these things coming at them, the property sellers research guide, those texts are coming through. They then get a CMA, which is a conversation in around that. They get invited to the welcome homes and see the contrast. All of this adds up to value beyond comparison. And then when you sit down, they get you in to do the listing presentation, and there's that slight marginal difference on fee. It becomes inconsequential if you then have the ability to readily explain that difference and show them where the value is. Voila. It's all over, Red Rover, and you are moving forward to winning that listing with a great deal of favor. So this is what we're going to do, just a rehash. Get your list to 25. If you can build that up to 50, so much the better. Get a focus on that list of names being centric to your service area. Start to engage with all of the passive connections that I've shown you. Feels like a bit of work, but it will pay enormous dividends as you move forward, especially when you get down there and you get that invitation to do that listing presentation. You win those listings. Next month, as we start to talk about December, we'll start to disseminate the before Christmases and the after Christmases, and this will work beautifully. It sets up that platform. you get those listings in, you make the sales on the way up to Christmas, you have the break, celebrating, and of course, we move into the new year, hitting the ground running with ready-made listings because we've built a process that is founded around momentum and continuity. My name's Mark Dwyer. You can reach me at Mark with a K at realestaterockstar.com.au, or feel free to contact me on +61 410 592 165 if you'd like to have a discussion as to how we can help you hit the peak performance professional status with weekly meetings and setting up specific plans around getting your productivity numbers up to where they ought to be. Catch you next week.